The storm hit Denver International at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in December, and by 5:15 the departure board looked like a slot machine that had given up trying. Canceled, canceled, delayed, canceled, delayed indefinitely. The terminal swelled with frustration, hundreds of stranded travelers pressing against rebooking counters like water against a dam. Raised voices, crying children, the particular brand of controlled panic that happens when 1,000 people simultaneously realize they are not getting home tonight. Jack Andrews sat on the floor near gate B34, his back against the cold window, watching the chaos with the quiet detachment of a man who'd learned a long time ago that some things were simply beyond his control. His duffel bag sat between his feet, his phone showed 14% battery, his boarding pass standby, Category 6, the absolute bottom of the priority list, might as well have been a bookmark for all the good it was going to do him tonight. 2 years. 2 years since Megan had died. Aneurysm, no warning, no history, no dramatic final words. She'd been laughing at something their daughter Rosie said at breakfast, had stood up to pour more coffee and simply collapsed. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was gone. Rosie had been 4. She'd watched the whole thing. She didn't speak for 3 weeks after. Jack had spent those 3 weeks learning how to be everything. Mother, father, grief counselor, bedtime storyteller, lunch packer, hair braider, monster checker, nightmare soother. He was an electrician by trade, good with his hands, good at fixing things that were broken, but there was no wiring diagram for a shattered family, no circuit breaker for grief. You just lived with the current running through you and hoped it didn't burn you down. Rosie was 6 now, staying with Jack's mother in Cedar Falls while he flew to Denver for a 3-day emergency rewiring job, the kind of overtime gig he couldn't afford to turn down. The plan had been simple: fly out Monday, work Tuesday and Wednesday, fly home Thursday evening, be there for Christmas Eve. The storm had other ideas. Jack texted his mother, "Flight's canceled, might not make it tonight. We'll keep you posted." "Kiss Rosie for me," his mother replied immediately. "She's already asleep. Don't worry about us. Just get home safe. We love you." He stared at the message. "We love you." 3 words that held the entire architecture of his life together. He should get in the rebooking line. It stretched from the counter past the food court, easily 200 people deep and barely moving. Instead, he sat and watched and waited, because that's what you did when you were at the bottom of the priority list. You waited. That's when he saw them. 3 girls, identical, maybe 7 years old, with matching blonde French braids and coordinated pink parkas trimmed with white fur. They sat together near gate B38, and something about them made Jack look twice. It wasn't the matching outfits or the identical faces. It was the stillness. The terminal around them was chaos, but these 3 girls sat perfectly composed, watching the departure board with an intensity that seemed too focused for children their age. One of them pointed at the board. Her hand moved in a fluid gesture Jack recognized instantly. Sign language. The second girl signed back, rapid and precise. The third nodded, her small face serious. Jack's chest tightened. They were deaf. All 3 of them sitting in an airport where every critical announcement was being made over loudspeaker only, watching a departure board that changed without explanation, surrounded by a system that had completely forgotten they existed. Jack watched as the gate agent at B38 picked up his microphone and made an announcement. Passengers surged forward, grabbing bags, rushing the counter. Rebooking instructions, seat reassignments, the desperate scramble of limited availability. The 3 girls didn't move. They watched the rush with confusion, signing rapidly to each other, trying to understand what was happening. Within 2 minutes, the seats were gone. The agent put down his microphone and turned to his computer. The girls approached the counter. The tallest one reached up and placed her hands on the counter edge, pulling herself up to be seen. She signed something to the agent. The agent looked down, frowned, said something. The girl signed again. The agent shook his head, pointed vaguely toward the long customer service line, and turned to the next passenger. Just like that, 3 deaf children dismissed with a gesture and a pointed finger, pushed out of the system in under 30 seconds. Jack watched the girls step away from the counter. The leader's face was tight, controlled. The middle one looked worried. The youngest had tears building in her eyes that she was clearly fighting to hold back. They huddled together, signed rapidly. They were problem-solving. 7 years old and problem-solving in a broken system that couldn't be bothered to see them. Something in Jack's chest cracked open. He knew that feeling. He knew what it was like to stand in a room full of people and be completely invisible, to need help and have no one notice. His mother had been partially deaf since childhood. A fever at age 3 had taken the hearing in her left ear. She'd learned sign language as a teenager, taught it to Jack before he could ride a bike. He'd grown up fluent in the silent language of hands. He hadn't signed regularly in years, not since his mother got her cochlear implant. But the language was still there, embedded in his muscle memory the way Megan's laugh was embedded in his heart. Some things you didn't forget. Jack looked at his boarding pass. Standby. He wasn't getting on a plane tonight anyway. He looked at the 3 girls. He made a decision. He grabbed his duffel and walked across the terminal. The girls saw him coming. 3 identical sets of blue eyes tracked his approach with the wariness of children who'd been taught that strangers weren't safe. Jack stopped 6 feet away, knelt down so he was at their eye level, and signed. "Hi, my name is Jack. I saw what happened at the counter. Can I help you?" 3 mouths fell open. 3 pairs of eyes went wide. The leader recovered first, her hands moving fast. "You sign. You actually sign. My mom taught me when I was little." Jack signed back. "What are your names?" "I'm Ren." The leader signed. "This is Iris." She indicated the middle girl. "And this is Lark." She pointed to the youngest. "Those are beautiful names," Jack signed. "Where are your parents?" The 3 girls exchanged glances, one of those silent sibling conversations that seemed to involve telepathy. "Our dad is supposed to meet us," Ren signed. "We were flying alone with the airline helper program, but no one came. They said someone would be with us the whole time, but when the storm started, they just disappeared." "We were supposed to get on the new flight," Iris added, her signs more measured than Ren's. But the man at the counter only talked into the microphone. We couldn't hear what he said. Lark signed, her movements smaller, shyer. And now the seats are gone. Jack felt anger build in his chest, quiet and controlled, the kind that didn't explode but hardened into resolve. "Can you reach your dad?" Ren pulled out a phone. The screen cracked, the battery icon red. "We tried. It goes to voicemail." "He might be on a plane already," Iris signed. "He was supposed to land before us," Lark added. "But everything is messed up now." "Okay," Jack signed. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk to customer service and figure out your options. I need you 3 to stay right here where I can see you. Don't move. Can you do that?" Ren studied him with that penetrating assessment children made when deciding whether an adult was trustworthy. "We can do that." "Are you a dad?" Iris asked suddenly. "Yes." "I have a daughter. She's 6. What's her name?" Lark signed. "Rosie." The 3 girls exchanged another glance. "That's a flower name," Ren signed. "Like ours." Jack's throat tightened unexpectedly. "Like yours. Stay here. I'll be back." The customer service line took 45 minutes. Jack stood in it patiently, watching the girls from across the terminal. When he reached the counter, the agent was frazzled, running on caffeine and diminishing goodwill. "I'm here about 3 unaccompanied minors," Jack said. "Gate B38. They're deaf. They were supposed to have airline assistance and no one showed. Their rebooking was announced over loudspeaker only. They missed it." The agent typed, looked at her screen, frowned. "I see them in the system. They're marked as self-managing." "Self-managing?" Jack repeated carefully. "They're 7 years old and deaf." The agent's face shifted. Discomfort, guilt. "Let me see what I can do," she typed furiously. "The next available flight is tomorrow morning, 7:15 a.m. I can get them on that." "What about tonight? Do they have hotel vouchers?" We ran out of vouchers 2 hours ago. The storm exceeded our capacity. Jack stood very still. 3 deaf 7-year-olds, stranded overnight. No vouchers, no assistance. They were supposed to be your responsibility, Jack said. His voice was calm but carried an edge that made the agent look up. We're doing our best, sir. The storm. Your best left 3 children invisible. The agent stared at him. Then she picked up the phone and made a call. 5 minutes later, Jack had the girls booked on the 7:15 flight and a promise that someone from the assistance program would meet them at the gate in the morning. But tonight was still a problem. The hotel situation was worse than the flights. Every airport hotel was booked. Jack called 6 from the terminal payphone because his own phone was nearly dead. The 7th, a modest place 2 miles from the airport, had 1 room left. Sir, it's the last room in a 10-mile radius, the desk clerk said. How much? $219 plus tax. Jack closed his eyes. He had $312 in his checking account. After rent, groceries, the electric bill due on the 28th, he had exactly enough to eat modestly until his next paycheck on January 3rd. $219 would wreck him. He thought about Rosie, about how she'd feel if she were stranded and alone, and a stranger decided the money mattered more than she did. Book it, Jack said. He walked back to the girls. I got you a hotel room, he signed. There's a shuttle that will take you there. You'll be safe and warm, and I'll make sure someone is here in the morning to get you to your flight. Wren looked at him, then at her sisters, then back. Where are you staying? Don't worry about me. I'll figure something out. You gave us your room, Iris signed. It wasn't a question. It's not my room, Jack signed. It's yours. You need it more. Lark stood up, walked over to Jack, and wrapped her small arms around his neck. When she pulled back, she signed, Thank you for seeing us. Something in Jack's throat closed so tight he couldn't have spoken even if he'd wanted to. The hotel shuttle arrived at 9:30. Jack walked the girls out, explained the situation to the driver, wrote the room number on a piece of paper and handed it to Wren along with his phone number. If anything goes wrong, show this number to someone at the front desk and have them call me. Wren took the paper, folded it carefully, put it in her pocket. Mr. Jack, she signed. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. Because someone should, Jack signed. And right now I'm the someone who's here. The girls climbed onto the shuttle. Iris and Lark waved from the window. Wren pressed her hand against the glass, fingers spread. The sign for I love you in its simplest form. Jack watched the shuttle pull away. Then he walked back into the terminal. Every seat was taken. He found a spot on the floor near gate B34, right where he'd started the evening. Dropped his duffel, balled up his jacket, and lay down on the polished tile. It was cold. It was hard. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The storm still raged against the windows. He pulled out his phone. 8%. Typed a text to his mother. Definitely not making it tonight. Don't tell Rosie. I don't want her to worry, his mother replied. She already knows something's wrong. She asked me 3 times if you were okay. That's because she's smarter than both of us. Tell her Daddy's helping some friends tonight and he'll be home as soon as he can. He put his phone face down on his chest, stared at the ceiling, thought about Megan, about how she would have done the same thing without hesitation. Probably would have adopted the girls by now. That was Megan. Her heart had been so big it was almost reckless. Jack's was quieter, more cautious, but it got to the same place eventually. He closed his eyes. The floor was cold. His back ached. He had $219 less in his account and no guarantee of getting home tomorrow. But somewhere across the city, 3 girls were warm and safe in a hotel room he couldn't afford. That was enough. Jack slept in fragments, 20 minutes here, 30 there. At one point, he woke to find someone had placed a thin airline blanket over him. He never found out who. By 5:30 a.m., the storm had broken. Pale gray light filtered through the terminal windows, and the departure board was slowly coming back to life. Jack sat up, every joint protesting, splashed water on his face in the restroom, changed his shirt, and headed for gate B38 to make sure someone from the assistance program actually showed up this time. He was halfway there when he saw the girls. They were walking through the terminal, but not alone, not with the frazzled staff from last night. They were flanked by two senior airline employees in pressed uniforms, the kind who worked the executive level, not the gate. The girls spotted Jack. Wren broke away first, running toward him with her sisters close behind. Three girls collided with him simultaneously. "You came back," Wren signed. "You said you'd be here and you came back." "I said I would," Jack signed. "How was the hotel?" "Warm," Iris signed. "Really warm." "They had little soaps shaped like seashells," Lark added. "I kept two. Is that okay?" Jack laughed, a real laugh, the kind that surprised him. "That's absolutely okay." The escort approached, professional but clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Andrews, we owe you a significant apology. Our assistance program failed completely last night. These girls should never have been left unattended." Jack looked at the man steadily. "No, they shouldn't have. We've filed an internal review. What happened was unacceptable." "Good. But I'm less interested in apologies than in making sure it doesn't happen to the next kids." The escort opened his mouth to respond, but something behind Jack caught his attention. His posture changed, straightened, the subtle shift of someone recognizing authority. Jack turned. A man was walking toward them. Tall, impeccably dressed in a dark overcoat, moving with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to rooms rearranging themselves around him. Maybe 45, dark hair graying at the temples, eyes taking in every detail with sharp precision. But it was his hands Jack noticed first, because his hands were moving. The man was signing as he walked, rapid and fluid, the fluency of someone for whom sign language wasn't a skill but a native tongue. My babies, are you okay?" "Daddy." Three girls broke away from Jack and ran. The man dropped to his knees and caught all three, pulling them into his arms with a ferocity that made Jack's breath catch. When he finally opened his eyes, they were wet. He pulled back, cupped Wren's face, and signed, "Tell me everything." Wren signed fast. Iris filled in details. Lark added the important parts. The man at the counter who wouldn't look at them. The announcement they couldn't hear. The helper who never came. And then Mr. Jack. Wren's sign slowed, became more deliberate. "Mr. Jack saw us. He signed to us and he talked to the airline people and he got us a hotel room and he paid for it himself and he slept on the floor, Daddy. He slept on the airport floor so we could have his room." The man's eyes found Jack, and Jack saw something shift in his expression. Not gratitude, not yet. Something deeper. Recognition. The look of one father understanding what another father had done. The man stood slowly, extended his hand. "I'm Elliot Ashford." He spoke and signed simultaneously. "Those are my daughters, Jack Andrews. They're incredible kids." Elliot studied him for a long moment. The kind of look that was reading everything, the worn jacket, the scuffed boots, the duffel bag held together with duct tape, and choosing not to judge any of it. "I want to understand what happened," Elliot said. "All of it." So Jack told him. The loudspeaker-only announcement. The gate agent who dismissed the girls with a pointed finger, the self-managing designation, the lack of vouchers, the hotel room, the floor. He told it calmly, precisely, the way he'd explain a wiring problem to a client. Just the facts, just the failure points, just the places where the system had broken and 3 children had fallen through the cracks. Elliot listened without interrupting. His jaw tightened as the story progressed. When Jack finished, Elliot turned to the escort. "Self-managing," he repeated. "My 7-year-old deaf daughters were marked as self-managing. Mr. Ashford, I assure you, get me your head of operations, not tomorrow, now." Within 10 minutes, 3 additional airline executives arrived. Elliot didn't shout. He stood in the middle of the terminal, his daughters beside him, and spoke with quiet devastation. "My daughters are deaf. That is not a deficiency. That is not a complication. It is a fundamental part of who they are. And your system treated it as an inconvenience to be bypassed." Every announcement was auditory only. Every rebooking instruction was spoken. You built a system that made my children invisible. He paused. If it weren't for this man, my daughters would have spent the night alone in a terminal, 7 years old, deaf, alone, because your airline couldn't be bothered to include them. Other travelers had stopped to listen. A small crowd formed. The airline executives were pale. "We will conduct a full review," one of them said. "Don't tell me what you'll do," Elliot said. "Show me. Fix the system so the next deaf child, the next blind child, the next child in a wheelchair doesn't disappear because they don't fit your default settings." Then Elliot turned to Jack and signed slowly, deliberately. "You saw my daughters when the world made them invisible. You gave them your room. You slept on a floor. You spent money you couldn't afford. And you did it because it was right. Not because anyone was watching, because you are the kind of man who sees people." Elliot produced a business card, Ashford Technologies. His name, CEO. Jack stared. "I run a technology company," Elliot said. "We develop accessibility software, communication platforms for the deaf and hard-of-hearing community. My daughters are the reason the company exists." He extended the card. "I don't want anything," Jack said. "I didn't do this for a reward." "I know," Elliot said. "That's exactly why I want to help." "But Jack, the girls told me everything. Ren told me you have a hole in your boot that you covered with cardboard." She noticed because she notices everything. Heat crept up Jack's neck. "Don't," Elliot said firmly. "A man who gives his last hotel room to 3 strangers' children while standing in shoes held together with cardboard is not a man who should feel shame. He's a man who should feel pride." Jack didn't know what to say, so he said the only thing that mattered. "Are the girls okay?" "That's what you ask," Elliot said. "Not what can I get. Are the girls okay?" He shook his head. "They're more than okay. They haven't stopped talking about you. Ren says you sign like a hearing person, which from her is the highest compliment she gives. Iris says you have kind eyes, and Lark says you need someone to take care of you the way you took care of them." The girls approached slowly, walking in that synchronized way they had, 3 small figures moving as one. "Mr. Jack," Ren signed. "Thank you for sleeping on the floor for us. Nobody made you. You just did it because you're good." "We were really scared before you came," Iris signed. "We thought nobody could understand us, but you could. You spoke our language. That's the best thing anyone's ever done for us." Lark reached into her pocket, pulled out one of the seashell soaps from the hotel, placed it in Jack's hand. "This is so you remember us," she signed, "in case you forget." Jack closed his fingers around the tiny soap. "I won't forget," I signed. "I promise." Boarding was announced for the 7:15 flight, this time visually and verbally. Someone had already started making changes. The girls waved as they walked toward the gate. Iris signed goodbye. Lark blew a kiss. Ren turned one last time and signed something that Jack felt in his bones. "You're not invisible either, Mr. Jack. Somebody sees you too." Jack stood at the gate window and watched the plane taxi away. The seashell soap was warm in his palm. His back ached from the floor. He had less than $100 in his bank account. He should have felt terrible. He felt something that surprised him, something that felt dangerously like hope. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived at Jack's apartment in Cedar Falls. Ashford Technologies letterhead. "Jack, you told me to fix the system, so I'm fixing it." Enclosed is a donation to the National Association for Accessibility in Travel, made in your name, along with a matching grant from Ashford Technologies to develop visual alert systems for airports nationwide. But I also want to fix something closer to home. A check fell out. $219. "Don't argue," the letter continued. "You covered my daughters. Let me cover you. And the girls have drawn you approximately 40 pictures. Larks are the best, but don't tell the others I said that." At the bottom, in handwriting instead of type, "My wife died when the girls were 3. Heart condition. I know what it's like to raise children alone. I know the weight of it. I know the shoe with the cardboard. If you ever need anything, call. Not because you owe me, because that's what fathers do for each other. Jack sat at his kitchen table for a long time. Then he texted Elliot's number. The pictures. Can you send photos? I want to show Rosie. Elliot responded in 30 seconds. All 40. She might need a wall. She's got a wall, Jack typed. 2 months later, Rosie's bedroom wall was covered in drawings from Wren, Iris, and Lark. Airplanes, seashells, a man sleeping on an airport floor rendered in enthusiastic crayon, and one from Lark that made Jack's throat close every time he looked at it. 4 stick figures, a tall one and 3 small ones standing in an airport. Above them, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, the man who saw us. Jack and Elliot talked every week. Video calls so the girls could sign with Jack and so Rosie could begin learning sign language from 3 very enthusiastic teachers. You're doing it wrong, Wren would sign, demonstrating the correct hand shape for the 10th time, like this, like a flower opening. I'm trying, Rosie would say, laughing, her small fingers fumbling. Try harder, Iris would sign, but she was smiling. You're almost there, Lark would encourage. Rosie loved them. Jack watched his daughter expanding her world, learning to communicate in a new way, discovering that different didn't mean less. It was the same lesson his mother had taught him 30 years ago. Some lessons took a generation to travel, but they always arrived. 6 months after the airport, Elliot called with a proposition. Not charity, business. I need someone who understands accessible electrical design, Elliot said. Someone who gets the practical side, wiring visual alert systems, vibration-based notifications, emergency lighting for the deaf community. My engineers design the software. I need someone who can design the hardware installation. You want to hire me? Jack said carefully. I want to partner with you. There's a difference. Elliot paused. You grew up with a deaf mother. You know the gaps in the system because you've lived them. My engineers are brilliant, but most of them have never wired a building in their lives. You've wired hundreds, and you understand why it matters. Jack thought about it, about the airport, about 3 girls who couldn't hear an announcement that determined whether they slept in a bed or on a floor, about every building he'd ever wired where the fire alarm was sound only, where intercoms were voice only, where the entire safety infrastructure assumed everyone could hear. I'd need to move to Chicago, Jack said. We have an office here. But honestly, a lot of the work is on-site at airports and hospitals across the country. You'd travel. Rosie Jack hesitated. What about Rosie? Bring her, Elliot said simply. The girls would be ecstatic. And there's a school near our office with a deaf education program. Rosie would learn sign language full-time. She'd grow up bilingual. Rosie was sitting across the kitchen table eating cereal, watching Jack's face with the unsettling perception of a 6-year-old who'd already learned to read adults like books. What? She asked. Daddy, what is it? How would you feel about moving to Chicago, near Wren and Iris and Lark? Rosie's spoon clattered into her bowl. She screamed so loud the neighbors knocked on the wall. The move happened in spring. Jack's mother came with them because she wasn't about to let her son and granddaughter move to a big city without supervision, as she put it. They found a small house, nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a yard just big enough for a garden, 12 minutes from Elliot's place and 15 from the Ashford Technologies campus. Jack started work the following Monday. The first project was retrofitting Denver International Airport, the same terminal, the same gates, the same system that had failed 3 girls on a December night. Jack spent 3 weeks on site, designing and installing visual alert systems at every gate, every counter, every boarding area, scrolling text displays synchronized with audio announcements, vibration pads built into seating areas that pulsed when gate changes occurred, emergency lighting sequences for weather delays. He wired it all himself, every connection, every circuit, every panel. And when he tested the system for the first time, watching text scroll across the screen at gate B38, announcing a rebooking that anyone could read regardless of whether they could hear, he stood in the terminal and cried. Because this was what fixing something actually looked like. Not a single house, not a single circuit. A system. an infrastructure designed to see everyone. 2 years after the airport, on a Tuesday evening in December, Jack and Elliot stood together in the Denver terminal for the official launch of the Ashford Accessibility Initiative. 6 major airlines had signed on, visual alert systems in 47 airports nationwide with plans for 100 more by the following year. It had started with a conversation in a terminal, a father's anger, an electrician's expertise, 3 girls who'd been made invisible by a system that couldn't be bothered to see them. Now the system saw everyone. 4 girls stood together near gate B34, Wren, Iris, and Lark, now 9, and Rosie, 8, fully fluent in sign language, their hands moving in rapid conversation that flowed as naturally as breathing. They'd become inseparable over the past 2 years. Not sisters by blood, but something just as real. Something built on seashell soaps and crayon drawings and a shared understanding that family wasn't always the one you were born into. "Daddy," Rosie said, tugging Jack's sleeve, "why do you keep staring at the floor?" "Because that's where it started," Jack said. "Right there. That cold, hard, uncomfortable floor." Wren appeared at his elbow. 12 now, tall and confident, still the strategist. "That floor is where you chose us," she signed. "Before you knew Dad, before you knew anything, you just saw 3 kids who needed help and you chose us. I'd choose you again," Jack signed. "Every time, every floor, every storm." Elliot clapped Jack on the shoulder. 2 fathers standing in the place where their lives had intersected, both of them thinking about the women they'd lost, the children they'd raised alone, the impossible, beautiful second chapter neither of them had expected. "Can I tell you something?" Elliot said. "Always. That night after you gave the girls the hotel room, I was on a plane, stuck on a tarmac for 4 hours, and the whole time I was terrified. Calling the airline, calling the police, calling everyone I could think of. And then I got a message from Wren. She'd found a charging station and texted me 3 words. We're safe. Someone helped." Elliot's voice cracked. "And I spent the rest of that flight thinking about what kind of person steps in for 3 kids they've never met? What kind of man gives up his room, his money, his night for strangers? And then I met you, and I understood." Jack looked at his friend. "What did you understand?" "That the world isn't as broken as I thought. That systems fail, but people don't have to. That somewhere in a crowded airport, a man with cardboard in his shoes and everything to lose saw 3 scared children and decided they mattered more than his comfort." Elliot paused. "You didn't just save my daughters that night, Jack. You restored my faith that the world could be better, and then you helped me build the systems to prove it." Jack's throat was tight. He looked at the departure board. Every gate had a visual display now. Every announcement scrolled in text. Every seat had a vibration sensor. The invisible had been made visible, not by grand gestures or billion-dollar budgets, by one man who knelt down and signed hello. "Mr. Jack." Lark appeared at his side. She was 9 now, but still the heart, still the one who carried a seashell soap in her pocket everywhere she went. She'd started a collection, hotels, gift shops, anywhere she found them, each one labeled with a date and a memory. "Yes, Lark?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out the original, the one from Denver 2 years ago. The edges were worn soft from being held so many times. She placed it in his hand. "I told you this was so you'd remember us," she signed, "but you never needed it, did you?" "No," Jack signed. "I never needed it, but I'm glad I have it." Lark smiled, that real smile, the one that transformed her whole face, the one that had first appeared in a chaotic airport terminal when a stranger knelt down and spoke her language. "Keep it forever," she signed. "So when you're old, you can show people and say, these were my girls. These were the ones who found me." Jack closed his fingers around the small soap, looked at Wren, Iris, and Lark, looked at Rosie, looked at Elliot. 2 families that had become one, not through romance or ceremony, but through something quieter and just as powerful. Shared loss, shared purpose. The mutual recognition of 2 fathers who understood that love wasn't something you protected by keeping small. It was something you grew by letting other people in. The announcement board at gate B34 scrolled a new message. Flight 714 to Cedar Falls. On time. Boarding in 30 minutes. Jack read it on the screen, every word visible, every word clear, and he thought about that night 2 years ago. The cold floor, the buzzing lights, the seashell soap pressed into his palm by a 7-year-old who just wanted to be seen. Some stories start with romance, some start with grand gestures or destiny. This one started with a storm, a broken system, 3 scared children, and a man who chose a cold floor so they wouldn't have to. He'd been invisible that night, too, sleeping on tile with cardboard in his shoes and less than $100 to his name. But 3 girls had seen him, had signed to him, had placed a seashell soap in his hand and whispered, in the only language they knew, "Remember us." He remembered. He'd never stop remembering. And every time he walked through an airport and saw the visual alerts scrolling across the screens, the ones he'd wired with his own hands, he'd think about that night, about the floor, about the choice, about how the smallest act of seeing someone, truly seeing them, could change the entire architecture of a life. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please don't let it end here. Let it remind you that the people who matter most are often the ones the world overlooks, and that choosing to see them is the most powerful thing any of us can do.